This story is fictional. It's based on real events, but everything beyond the known facts is speculation. Our goal is to explore an alternate timeline, not to rewrite history, but to imagine what might have been. In April 2025, Canadians went to the polls in one of the most emotionally charged federal elections in the country's modern history. The backdrop was a genuine sovereignty crisis. Donald Trump had spent months threatening to annex Canada as the 51st state, imposing punishing tariffs on Canadian exports and openly mocking the country's ability to survive as an independent nation. Mark Carney, the former central banker turned liberal leader, built his entire campaign around a single idea: Canada will not be bullied. It worked. The Liberals, who had been trailing badly just weeks before, surged on a wave of nationalist anger and won enough seats to form government. But the polls had told a different story for most of the preceding year. Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives had led by double digits for months. Their message was simpler and older: the economy is broken, the liberal era is over, time for a change. In another world, one where Trump's provocations registered as noise rather than existential threat, that message might have been enough. So what if it had been? What if the nationalist surge came too late, the liberal vote didn't hold, and on election night, Pierre Poilievre walked out to claim a conservative majority? The first thing a Poilievre government does is reach out to Washington, not spin, strategy. The Conservatives campaigned on fixing the economy and the fastest path there is to stop the bleeding from tariffs. Within weeks of taking office, the new government signals willingness to reopen CUSMA, the Canada-United States-Mexico Agreement, on terms more favorable to American interests. In Ottawa, this is called pragmatism. In Washington, it reads as something else: confirmation that the previous government's resistance was theater and that Canada can be moved. Trump does not respond with gratitude. He escalates. American negotiators arrive with a list that goes well beyond tariffs: guaranteed access to Canada's northern energy corridors, regulatory harmonization that would pull Canadian environmental and labor standards down toward American benchmarks, a defense cost-sharing arrangement that would require Ottawa to clear major procurement decisions with the Pentagon. Each demand arrives wrapped in the language of partnership. None of them leave Canadian sovereignty intact. The reaction inside Canada is immediate and volcanic. Quebec had already been drifting toward renewed sovereigntist sentiment under the strain of federal-provincial tension. Now, watching a conservative federal government hand economic and regulatory authority to Washington, the National Assembly moves. A formal sovereignty motion passes with broad support, not a referendum, not yet, but a declaration that Quebec considers the federal government to have broken faith with the Constitutional Compact. Then the other premiers begin lining up, not in solidarity with Quebec, but with their own grievances. Alberta threatens to push its autonomy agenda further than it ever has. British Columbia's government starts quiet conversations about what a Pacific-facing trade identity might look like without Ottawa as intermediary. The federal government, trying to manage Washington on one side and a disintegrating national consensus on the other, finds itself paralyzed. Parliament descends into emergency sessions that produce nothing. The Governor-General receives formal letters from constitutional scholars questioning whether the government retains the confidence of the Federation itself, not just the House. The markets notice. The Canadian dollar, already weakened by months of tariff uncertainty, begins a sustained decline. Foreign direct investment, which had been holding steady through the pre-election turbulence, starts to retreat. Companies that had been waiting to see how things resolved now see the resolution and don't like it. A government that bent to Washington's demands did not stabilize anything. It advertised weakness and capital moves accordingly. the Bank of Canada raises rates to defend the dollar. It makes things worse at home. Mortgage holders, already stretched, begin defaulting in numbers not seen since the early 1990s. Housing markets in Toronto and Vancouver, already under pressure, enter a correction that turns into something uglier. Unemployment climbs. Food bank usage hits records. The economic relief the Conservatives promised, the whole reason many Canadians voted for change, is nowhere in evidence. The pain is worse than before, and now the country is also fracturing. By the end of the first year, the map of Canada looks different in every way, except on paper. The federal government in Ottawa is functionally a satellite of Washington, constrained by agreements signed in its first 6 months. Quebec is operating with de facto autonomy across an expanding range of policy areas, building the legal architecture for a third referendum. Alberta has passed legislation asserting provincial primacy over resource revenues that directly contradicts federal law. The courts are overwhelmed. Constitutional lawyers appear on television every night. The country that survived the 1995 Quebec referendum by less than a percentage point, that held together through the pipeline wars and 100 years of regional grievance, that country is now coming apart. Not with a single dramatic break, with 100 small ones, each province pulling toward its own gravity, each region calculating whether Ottawa still offers more than it costs. No invasion, no war, just one election, one pivot toward Washington, and the slow unraveling of the bet Canadians made in 1867 that they could build something together and keep it. In this world, history went one way, but here, we ask what could have happened. If you want more alternate timelines and government what-ifs, subscribe, comment your theory, and stay tuned. This is State of What If.